Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today on IBT Online's webinar, How to Using Your Website to Grow Your Exports. We're delighted to be here with you all, and I can just see the last people trying to log on now. It's great. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we're going to get straight into it. We have got a really great program today for you. Our objective is to provide you with really great information and takeaways to help you grow your exports and your international business and successfully. So before we get down to introductions, and just while I'm waiting for the last people to log on, a couple of quick notes on housekeeping during the webinar. So please note also that this webinar is part of a whole series of online global webinars that have been going on for quite a while now, and we're really delighted. We've been having these webinars for a couple of years. Really targeted at exporters and making their lives, providing information, making their lives a little bit easier. This webinar today is going to be about 45 minutes long. We do have 3 polls during the webinar, and we'll be asking you for some information, which we would, love you to kick in and get your mouse ready to click on the things that interest you. We are also really encouraging you to put in your questions. There's a chat box on your screen. Just drop us a question anytime during the webinar, and we're going to circle back to you at the end of the webinar for to get you some responses, either from myself or Janice from the Arkansas people. We've also got some handouts for you, some infographics that might be interesting for people on specific markets. And then know as well that you will be receiving this slide deck and recording later on in the week, in about 2 days' time, I think. So that really you can just sit back and enjoy the webinar and just spend your time just getting some information and absorbing the information. One last thing is that there is a survey at the very end of the webinar. There is a survey. We would really appreciate it if you could fill out the survey. It really helps us make sure that we're absolutely on trend for what's interesting you as exporters. So now, sit back, enjoy the webinar, and let's introduce ourselves first of all. I'm going to start off here. My name is Susanna Hardy. I'm the Chief Content Officer for IBT Online. I'm actually based in the UK, and I've been with IBT Online for several years now. And I guess my title reflects the growing importance of content and the fact that we felt it necessary really to identify content as one of the main drivers for web efficiency and web optimization in today's market. We also are so pleased to have the Director of Africa and Middle East Trade with us today, Denise Henderson Thompson, with us from the World Trade Center of Arkansas. And I'm going to let Denise introduce herself. And thank you so much, Denise, and for being here with us.
Well, thank you for having me. The World Trade Center is looking forward to hearing the presentation and want to offer all participants support as it relates to anything that we might be able to do to help you expand your global trade. The focus here is really to help you all better understand what opportunities there are for you in the international market via online services and or products. And Susanna's team is probably the best in the industry as it relates to globalizing your website and finding ways to do it where it is profitable for your organization fairly quickly. So I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank Susanna and IBT for presenting this. And if there's anything else that you'd like to learn that we did not cover, or other workshops that you'd like for Susanna and I to participate or to present to you, we'd be more than happy to do that. But thank you for coming, and thank you, Susanna, for the wonderful introduction.
Well, thank you for that also, Denise. That's very kind. Just a very quick word on IBT, IBT Online. So IBT stands for International Business and Technologies. We've been around for a while, since 2002. We are 100% focused on exporters, on companies that are going internationally. And we're 100% focused on online tools. So that's 2 spheres: exporters and online tools. We've designed things called online global programs, which have several states have rolled out. And we've worked a lot with Export Tech as well, which some of you might know, and we are also a recognized provider by U.S. Commercial Services. We are a U.S. company, actually, but we have an office in the U.K., where I'm sitting today, as well as in Germany, France, and some outreach offices in other places as well. We are involved, as I said, in online tools, primarily website building for exporters, for multilingual websites, and then doing the social media, the online marketing, any content creation that needs to be done. So really just, absolutely on that sphere, and that's what we're so delighted to talk about today. So today we thought we'd divide this really into a couple of different sections. How to make it seem both easy to you and really that you see how other companies are using their websites, in what ways they're using their websites to grow their exports. So let's first look at getting found and being understood and doing businesses. And as I said, please drop in questions whenever it occurs to you, and we'll circle back at the end. So let's start off with just about sort of getting found. What do we mean by this? What is this? And let's look at the online world today. There's a terrific asset for anyone who's listening to this called Hootsuite Me or Social. They produce this every year. And it's a fantastic sort of statistics resource for anyone on the web. And despite all the controversy around privacy and hacking and fake news and all that other negative stuff on the online world, we're all continuing to just go online and use the internet and social media. And in fact, global digital growth shows no sign of slowing at all. In fact, the big story for 2018 is the accelerated growth in internet users. Internet users grew by 9% last year. It was actually up about 7% in 2017, so it's actually growth. That means 360 million people came online for the first time in 2018. 1 million new people a day. So it's a lot. And this means not just getting online every now and then, how Hootsuite Me or Social measure it. The average time spent per person across the world is 6.5 hours a day. So, really, when we talk about the internet being ubiquitous, it really is. It really is everywhere, all the time, and every country using it. And what are we doing on it? Well, one of the main things we're doing is we're just talking and communicating with each other. So out of those nearly, over 4 billion people online, nearly 4 billion are using 3.5 billion are using social media. So 45% of the world's population is using social media. That's 3.5 billion people. It's interesting to note that the majority of this is via mobile phone, and we'll get back to that later. So what does all this mean, all these people online? What does this mean, this ubiquitous internet? Well, it basically means that there's a real paradigm shift for business today. It means that business you can't ignore it, it has to deal with it. And the internet is customer-centric, it's searcher-centric. And this has meant that businesses have to be ever more customer-centric. Businesses no longer have the choice. Their customers, their prospects, their suppliers, their competitors, their employees, their prospective employees are all online. And with that person, that customer is central to it. So you as a company, you have to provide the goods and services when and how your customers want. And your job as a salesman, and particularly if you're involved in marketing, is to influence all those little black arrows, those threads that link customer to customer, customer to competitor, and sort of wave your hand at them and make sure that those lines are influenced by you, the company, that they know of your existence and that they engage with you, and even that they trust you enough to buy from you. And this is as true for B2C as it is for B2B. And in our view, nowhere is it more important, more true than for exporters. So it's quite a challenge. But luckily, there's a lot of online tools that are now within reach of all companies. This is, the internet has progressed far enough that it's not just the big companies that can use it to grow their businesses and exports. and businesses online. It's now all companies can access this. So at the core of all this is a concept called website localization. And to understand that, I think it's really helpful to look at some of the basics of the internet and how we use the internet. And so let's take a quick look at search engines. Now, we all think we know search engines because we all use them all the time, but it's worth ever, having a bit of a think about them. Now, this is a slide which says how many, some of the big search engines across the world. They're very monopolistic world of search engines. Google is the absolute supremo with a huge market share globally, but there's some big exceptions, notably Russia with Yandex, and even more so China, where Google has a insignificant market share, and a lot of homegrown search engines led by Baidu, but other ones as well, like Shenma, Sogou, and others. And what do they all do? Search engines organize the internet. They classify the information and they rank the information. So they classify it and they rank it, okay? And they rank it according to the searcher. So they're searcher or customer centric. This gets back to that diagram I showed you. So just that customer centric slide. So when you think of Google as they're the main search engine across the world, and certainly in the United States with about 70% market share, think of it not as like one Google, but like 192 different Googles. So search engines don't really care about your website or your wishes. They care about the person searching, the company searching. They categorize and prioritize websites according to the user. They are therefore localized. So you might have the best product ever, and your website gets you some traction, especially around your headquarters in Arkansas, but it is pretty well invisible to someone in Germany or Argentina. Google doesn't rank your website as relevant to that person, or that person in, I don't know, northern Quebec or Mexico. So, I mean, here's an example. Here's an example of what a Florida-based colleague of mine, Samantha, was. I asked her, go to your Google, which is google.com, and type in red shoes. And what do you get? She sits in Miami. And she gets lots of things about Macy's and Zappos and Nordstrom. And I'm sitting here in London, and I go red shoes. Google.co.uk for the UK. I go red shoes. I get very different things. I get things that are relevant to me, because the internet and Google is customer centric. It's looking at what I want, not what you as a red shoe supplier wants. Okay, so that's the kind of example here. Here's an example. I've listed here on this slide 10 characteristics, 10 aspects that we believe characterize a localized website. In other words, a website that responds to the customer-centric world of the internet. And you can see that language is 1 out of 10 criteria. It's just 1 out of 10. Fully adapted to local language is just one thing. There are a lot of other things that have to happen for Google or whichever search engine to make your website relevant to your prospect, your target. So if you're targeting someone in Montreal, then Google Montreal, Google Canada, has to believe that your website is really relevant for that person. And here are the 10 criteria that would make that relevancy. And we're going to talk through some of those things, not in great length, but at least we're going to skim over and hopefully encourage some thoughts, some discussions, some questions for that. You'll see that about, I'd say 2/3 of them, well, certainly half, are really techie. They're about things like domain names and multilingual navigation, regulatory requirements, and content management systems. But some of them are, I would say, softer: translation, cultural aspects, design aspects, and design adaptation. So there's these two parts to it: the techie part and the less techie part, the softer edge, sort of content edge. So both play and both are important to make sure that your website really works for you as an exporter in your target export markets. So I'm going to now launch a first poll, and I hope that you have your mouse ready. And I want to ask you if you already have localized websites. Do you already have localized websites? Yes, for all of your export markets. Yes, for some of them. Are you thinking about it? And there's a couple more people still have to click on their mice, and they're clicking now. And they're still clicking, and they're still clicking. I can give you a little bit of response. About half of you say yes for your domestic market and some of your export markets. There's a few of you, very few, who say yes for domestic and all export markets. And then there's a few of you who say thinking about it. And there's a few of you who haven't voted yet. But the majority are saying yes for your domestic market and for some of your export markets. Thank you very much. Close poll. Now let's talk about some of these aspects and what we mean by them. So the second part about being understood is some of the techie parts. Again, this is not a webinar about technology, so I won't bore you about it, but I wanted to skim through just to make sure that you're aware of some of those main things. And after all, if you think of your website as your main sales and marketing tool, it starts to get important. It's after all the first place a new prospective client will go to check you out. So a lot has to go in to a website to help build the trust that you need for the buyer's journey, for a buyer to actually go through and say, yes, I trust this supplier, and therefore I'm going to be buying from that supplier. So a lot has to go through this for that. If we look at some of these things, there's culturally appropriate images, I said, translation, keywords, digital recognition. So all of these things go into that trust. Let's look now at some of the core ones that perhaps we find often get perhaps a little bit ignored when you're thinking about it. Okay, one of the first things I wanted to mention was something called content management system. CMS are software, they're architecture platforms basically that websites get built on. So someone who's building a website chooses a CMS, a content management system. And there are lots of different ones, and webmasters all have their favorites. And if you're going internationally, there's lots of choice. But you have to know that some CMSs are good at international, some CMSs are good at supporting different languages, currencies, typefaces, and some are not. So you need people with an international web experience. Okay. Similarly for hosting, Google has local hosting as a criteria for ranking. So if you're not hosted locally, you don't get a tick in that Google box. Many countries won't even let you have a local website unless you host locally. China, for example. Hosting locally means you have a local relevance. And for your audience, it also means that you have good up and downloading speeds, which are absolutely essential. It's interesting as well Google is actually talking about under half a second for up and download speeds. So you really, really have to be hosted very locally indeed. Next on our list for these things is digital compliance. And I wanted, after talking about it with Denise, I really wanted to highlight this one as well. I think it's terrifically important, and it's a tsunami coming at anyone with a website. Please, if you take anything away from this, please make sure that your websites are digitally compliant. And if you're looking at international websites, that's especially important. Europe leads the pack in terms of digital compliance, and they introduced last year in May the General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR. This is a very clearly defined process to make sure that data is kept securely and that the ownership rights of data are clear as well. And this is interesting as well because it has real teeth. If you are not compliant, there are big, heavy fines. Note that California is introducing a similar variant, really. A California Consumer Privacy Act, the CCPA, is also is part of the is similar to GDPR.
Susanna, this is
Yes.
Denise. I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to add something here. I'm actually in a conference right now with the U.S. Department of Trade in Washington, D.C., and this came up just in our first session this morning was GDPR, and the example that was given of British Airways being fined over $1 billion for not being compliant. So I really want everybody to pay attention to this area, because this is definitely going to affect how you do business and whether or not you're able to stay in business, because they are looking at how British Airways is actually going to be able to pay that fine, because it is significant and will affect their business.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Denise. As I said, this has real teeth, and it's not just Europe who's looking at it. A lot of countries are saying this is the right way to go. We need to do this. Obviously, the big companies are first in the firing line, but mid caps are right there as well. So please be GDPR compliant. If you want the top standard, it's GDPR, but it applies to everybody. So please, and thank you very much, Denise, for that. It's really important. In fact, let's do a poll. Let's do a quick poll. Are your websites digitally compliant? Do you know if they are? Are you working on it? Are all of your websites digitally compliant? Yes, some of them. You're working on it, or no? I guess really we have quite a few people saying that some of them, but actually the majority of you are working on it. The majority of you are working on it, and well, no, hold on, sorry, there's some last people coming in. No, it's still, the majority of people are still working on it, but a close second is some of the websites are digitally compliant. Well, I'm glad that some of them are. But there are quite a few people attending this who are unsure or who say no. So please, make sure you're GDPR compliant. And we have a lot of assets on our website and webinars and things like that if you have further interest. Moving on, I wanted to another major issue for website localization is your domain name. And one of the key things here is deciding on your domain name for your export website. So let's say you want a website in the Philippines, then you need, not the .com, but maybe you need a Philippine URL. So there's actually a lot of choices. And we typically start by asking a client about their priority markets and their target audiences, and also their competitors. And that determines whether we privilege a country or a language style domain name. And here's an example of the kind of, table that you would go through. So I told you there's a lot of choices about what you could have. But once we've worked out the website strategy, whether you're country focused or language focused, then, we help you decide what kind of domain name works for you. It's important to understand that there are a lot of choices, and that you shouldn't just go for the first option or something. Each one has a different angle to it. The best option for search engine optimization is the first one. That's using a country code top level domain name, but it does need quite a bit of maintenance as well. So the next option is subdirectories with top levels, and then generic ones that you might have for whole regions. The regional ones work really well in places like South America. Why? Because all of South America is dominated by one search engine, Google. It's all similar language. Let's say if you're going for X minus Brazil, so it would all be in Spanish. And countries are geographically very, that whole market is very close together and integrated. So let's look at an example of a regional one. This is our client, Hay Quality Water. They decided to use one website to target all of Latin America. So after deciding their needs, we decided to go for a .lat domain name. That's the most cost efficient one. And it'll get you found in the entire region. The downside is it's a little bit slower. The ranking takes a little bit more work to get up there. rather than having a sort of, a specific country for, domain name for each country in Latin America. But it's still a good choice, particularly as I said in Latin America. Now let's look at an example where you target one country. This is China. China's not so easy. Here's an example of a company, one of our clients called ASG. We built the website to target China, and it resulted in some fantastic orders for this market. Purchasing a .cn domain name was a very obvious choice for them. It's a huge market. It's potentially their largest market, and it was the only, someone in that market would not accept anything but a CN domain name. They can't access it if it's on Google and all sorts of things like that. So it was an absolutely clear choice for them. I'd also like to point out that not all domain registers have access to register.cn domain names. It gets messy if you don't know how, and if you don't know who you should be dealing with. So careful on that one. So now let's talk about some of those experiences again. Now let's talk about the sort of the user experience and how that helps you use your website to do your business. Another aspect of sort of website localization and using those websites for you will be translation and design. And I'm not really going into design in any major way here, except very briefly, because I mean, design is also a personal thing, what colors and things like that you like. But I think it's very important to point two things out when you're looking at international websites. The first is that translation is often a different size than your English language. I've put an example here of German. It's typically 20% longer than anything you write in English. And I've given you an example of a compound word, Massenkommunikationsdienstleistungsunternehmen. Now, how do you fit that onto a mobile screen? So, there are issues with language that you should be aware of right from the beginning when you're building the website. Another example is typically is Chinese, or any language that doesn't have the same, is not Roman letters. Different fonts, sizes, designs, and so on, all are important. I said German can be 20% longer, while Chinese is about 30% shorter. Also, you can't use bold because it gets unreadable. So there are things like that you just have to know in terms of design when you're looking at that kind of design things for your website. And please also remember, translation and design, all those things, make sure that actually everything does get translated, and make sure that everything does have designs on it for that. Here for translation, there's different types of translation, different ways of translating things. And in a sense, translating content is the easy part. It's translating it in a really way that comes across not as a translation, but as a really thing that reads at home with your target audience. First of all, though, a couple of things I wanted to point out. Make sure that everything is actually translated. That means everything from your site navigation, also your content. How about your help desk? It also means including multilingual SEO meta tags. Those are those lines in the HTML of a given web page that give Google the context when crawling through the page. Those have to be translated too. Otherwise, Google doesn't think it's translated. So headers, keywords, other elements of article structure are some really important ones. They all need to be translated too. Also, just a tip, don't automatically redirect a user to a different language based on location. It's fine to suggest an alternative language site, but you don't know without asking if that English language searcher in France is an expat, a student, or someone who's lost on the internet. Let's talk a little bit about user experience again here and keywords for this. Localizing keywords is really important for the translation. So here's an example of when you make sure that the word is right for the market. So you've translated your text. into Spanish, but you're targeting the Mexico market. Are your terms Mexican Spanish? If there are different keywords in different markets. So if you're in the automobile sector, automobile is going to be, car is going to be one of your main keywords that you're going to have to get right. Are you targeting Spain, where the word is coche, or Mexico, where 73% who go on the internet look for auto? So it's the same search engine. It's Google in both cases. Supposedly the same language, different keywords, therefore different Google ad campaigns. So for that. Now let's look at mobile. Mobile is one of the key things going forward as well for this world. And I think it's out of 4.5 billion internet users, nearly 4 billion have mobile phones. It's pretty amazing when you think that the first smartphone was introduced in 2008. It's definitely also been the motor behind e-commerce growth. That's e-commerce and m-commerce. And m-commerce and mobile wallets are absolutely the norm. So really an important part of your internet strategy is to make sure that you have a strong mobile enablement on your website. And growth is very much here driven by the developing countries for mobile in particular. Google is certainly taking note. To this quote from Google. Google is taking mobile enabled as a ranking factor. So again, it's one of those things that you have to have in order to be ranked well by the search engines. This is just a little example I wanted to give you of a company we work with called Pivot Point, and we talked about mobile being for the developing markets, but this is actually for Italy, where ranking is actually different on a mobile for a non-mobile. So, and you can rank differently whether you're seeing it on a PC or on a mobile phone. Search engines definitely improve the ranking when it's mobile enabled, and I think any website today has got to have really mobile enablement for that. Now let's look at how websites can actually really engage and help do business here. Doing business is really all about attracting and engaging and delighting your customers. So you need to reach out and communicate them. And search engines take into consideration the social media engagement and the buzz around any of your content. So really important. I wanted to show these screenshots. These are, if you have an interest in seeing some more case studies, we have case studies listed on our website. If you go to our website, IBT Online, and look at some of the case studies, all of these are customers talking through their experience of localized websites. And again, you could go through those and see which ones you associate with, which ones do you feel, hey, this is something that resonates with me. Social media, as I said, 3.2 billion people now, actually it's more like 3.5 billion now, are online with social media. It's really become the core way of looking and attracting and engaging with the customers. Search engine optimization and social media are no longer really two separate online marketing strategies. You really have to pull them both together. They're interlinked and very interdependent on each other. And when you combine search engine optimization with social media, that's when you get really high quality visitors. Your really top prospects come into your websites and really using your websites. And that applies to any market. And by the way, if you think that social media is strong in your market, if you think the US uses social media, there are markets out there that leave the US in the dust in terms of use of WhatsApp, Facebook, LinkedIn, and so on. Mexico, for example, more people go on WhatsApp than on Google when they search for things, for example. So it really becomes terrifically important. And social media platforms are a terrific way for companies to improve their international market presence and reach potential clients all over the place. They're also really useful for market research, business to consumer, B2B or B2C, or even C2C, consumer to consumer communication is through that. I could launch a third poll here. Let's do a third poll. This is going to be a last poll. How about that? Do you use social media to promote your brand today? Do you actively use social media? Yes, in all of your export markets. Yes, in some of the export markets. Are you thinking about it? So where are you on social media? Is social media something that you do actively or every now and then? I can tell you that basically we're still looking. Oh, a lot of you are still thinking about it. Actually, a lot of you are thinking about it, and some of you are using it in some of the export markets, and there's a very few of you looking at it in all export markets, but the majority of you are still thinking about it. Well, that's fantastic. I'm glad you're at least thinking about it. It's good. Good. We're happy about that. Okay, moving on. The key to any social media is obviously also the measuring success and making sure that you're on track. And one of the key things I think that we see, companies doing perhaps not enough of is not really defining their goals well enough. So in any strategy for export, and especially for things like social media, which are very plastic, which move very quickly, you need to have very defined goals and stick to them. And then, you can tweak them as you go to make sure that you're on track and getting the right results, but you're not just getting vanity clicks, but you're actually really engaging with the target audiences. And that really includes analyzing the results and making sure that you're on track. And here's another example about this keyword optimization that I wanted to put in, just because it's such an important aspect. Again, the difference between Portuguese in Portugal and Portuguese used in Brazil. So again, if you're in Portugal and you say the word train, you'd use the word comboio. And if you're in Brazil, you'd use the word tren. These keywords are also applicable for your social media. So make sure that when you're using your social media that you are using the right keywords. So keywords are just as important in social media as they are in website optimization. So it's really important to get the right terminology for your international markets to be as relevant as possible to your potential buyers. Okay, so here's this example for Brazil on that. This is just a screenshot of some social media campaigns for some of our clients. And again, a clearly defined objective and then a clearly defined performance metrics. So the objective and the performance metrics have to sort of link up and be relevant to each other. And then you say, okay, are we achieving our KPIs? Are we achieving our performance metrics? Do we need to change anything? How are we doing on this for this? So this was about creating blogs and blog content to optimize site performance. So we localized the blog for the UK and then for the Latin American markets. And we promoted the content on social media. And as I said, see, the goal there is clearly to drive mid-funnel traffic to the website. So it was interesting because we also noted quite a strong uptick on the website via Google as well for that. So if your brand is still getting known in your target markets, though, if you're still working on brand recognition, you should be looking more at top funnel content. That's the very top end of it, so the very broad part to drive targeted traffic to the website, and then you build up pixel audience for future retargeting. Here's an example of promoting a company, a client of ours, Blumen Products, in the UK and in Germany. And the picture is easy because we can use the same picture. That's easy enough. The keywords have all been researched, and it's an easy one to do. And the target persona in this particular case were art teachers. By promoting this, the top funnel side on social media, we get retargeting with our product ads later on using pixel audiences. So there you go. That's just some examples on the social media side. Some takeaways, and then I do note that there are quite a few questions, which is fantastic. You've still got a few minutes to put in some questions, so please do. Some takeaways. I think the one thing we wanted to say really was that exporters in particular benefit from international websites. One, because the world is online. And two, because international websites allow you to really grow your brand and to get found easily, to be understood in that local market, and then to build up the trust you need for the buyer's journey with a good localized website. So that's the first takeaway we wanted to really emphasize. And the second takeaway really was that localized websites and international online marketing allows you to tick a lot of different boxes in terms of your export objectives. It percolates through to build global brand recognition over time. You can use it to generate leads, whether that's to generate leads directly to you or to be directed towards distributors. It establishes your credibility, and also it allows partners and potential distributors to eventually find you as well, which is an important thing that we find for a lot of our clients as they look for in-market partners. And then these 10 criteria that I wanted to highlight again about the sort of criteria that we define for website localization, both the techie part and the translation to language part, the regulatory requirements, which we discussed, the optimization for localized search engines, and mobile enablement, and the registered domain name. So there's a lot of different criteria. A lot goes into making good international websites for this. And I've put two little handouts on this webinar, and I hope that you can see them. If you go down on your right-hand side, you should be able to see handouts. And it says Global Social Media for Exporters, or Mexico's Online Environment. Those are just two little infographics that I hope might interest you. I know that a lot of you are doing business already in Mexico, and I was hoping that a lot of you also are looking to increase your social media internationally. So hopefully those two infographics have some interest for you. Now I'm looking through, and I do see that there's quite a few questions. I'm gonna just go through them at random as they've come in. One of the very first ones for Denise. Denise, if you're there, Denise, can I use my international trade fair assistance for a website? Denise, I don't know if you offer trade fair assistance for companies.
Well, when you say trade fair assistance, I guess I'm a little confused about what exactly that means. If it's to trade fair assistance, if it's something that you're posting on your website that talks about what you're doing with the trade fair, possibly, yes. But beyond that, I need you to type in a better explanation of what your question is so that I can give you a better answer. I don't know that there's clarity with the question for me.
Okay. Just while I have you here, I have another question, which is there any assistance available for companies?
There usually is assistance available related to the STEP grant, but this particular round, we did not write it into the grant. However, we have written it, and I have Trish Watkins on the phone with me right now, so she can correct me as I go along, who is the STEP grant coordinator. For 2020, we did write it into the grant, so there could potentially be assistance available provided we get the grant. And if that's the case, whoever wrote that question, you can contact me probably at the end of September, and we can let you know what's available and if we were able to acquire that grant. But it was written in for the 2020 grant for assistance with the website translations.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. This next question is about social media. Does social media help with search engine optimization for international markets? As I think, as I wanted to say, it's sort of a symbiotic relationship. I mean, the short answer is yes. Yes, social media helps with search engine optimization for international markets. The longer answer is that social media doesn't help SEO in the way that many people think it does. Just to make it clear, social media is not a direct ranking factor in your algorithms, but it has an impact on the search engine optimization. And Google confirmed that links shared on Facebook and Twitter and so on are used as a ranking signal. So if you create good content, it will most likely be popular on social media. People are going to like it and then link it, which boosts your ranking. So there you go. So there's definitely sort of a symbiotic or a positive feedback between the two, but there isn't a direct tick in the algorithm box. Another question I think for us is about videos. What about videos? How do I do them for international markets? This is a fantastic question. We love videos, more videos, and they are a really cost-effective way for you guys, for exporters, to boost their websites and their engagement and everything. So first of all, search engine algorithms are increasingly prioritizing websites with video content. So videos help you rank. But after all, video alone is not the only thing. So video gives you a boost in your rankings, so allows more people to see your site, which means more people click on your link, but they won't actually stay on your site if your on-page content isn't high quality. So it must be good quality. But I am glad that you're looking to internationalize your videos. It's always really cost efficient to reuse content, and very often it's totally acceptable. We found it totally acceptable to have, let's say you've got a video on your US website, it's in English, just get the right content translated as subtitles. So you don't have to overvoice it. It's not expensive to redeploy an existing video. The only side note is that China is different. Baidu operates different. YouTube is banned. So that's a separate conversation. Email me if you want to talk about China separately. But for the rest of the world, pretty well, for most of the world, you can just use your existing videos and then put good subtitles on it. There's another question that's come in, which is about where to get started. We're looking to get started on international markets. Which markets are best to get started in? Well, it really depends on you. I mean, we could do any market, but you have to choose your priority markets. For most exporters, these are probably the largest trading blocks in countries. I mean, the USA, China, Germany, Japan, or blocks even like Europe, Latin America. For us, typically we would say, most of our clients start with going for the markets that have the lowest hanging fruit, so the fastest return on investment, and those are the markets that they choose. I think those are the markets that we would recommend that you get started with. I'm happy to go through more detail if you want. You could just contact me directly if you want to see how we prioritize markets or whatever. A question about GDPR and digital compliance. What about GDPR? Does it apply to US companies? Yes, it does. It applies to any company because it applies to any company that interacts with any European. That includes a European distributor. That includes a European supplier or even European employees. And remember, as I said, that a lot of other countries are looking to imitate GDPR. I mean, Japan, Australia, Canada, India, Colombia are all looking at a version of GDPR. So it's worth just, in our view, it's worth just going for the top level, that GDPR compliance, and that way you've got everything covered. Another question I have here is about international distributors. The question basically is, if I read it through, the question is really, the person is saying that all their websites are run by their international distributor. And how can they see if they're doing a good job or not? Well, I think international distributors play a vital role and will help with your international websites. But we would really recommend you think carefully about who you're leaving these assets to. I mean, think of your international websites as your international offices. You wouldn't, or your international brand, you wouldn't just hand your brand over to your distributor. We would recommend that you own your domain names. You keep in charge and control of your international websites. Allow your distributors to use them, or to engage with them, or to provide content, or whatever, or put a safe space in that website where they can go for online sales. But don't hand your brand, your international real estate over to a distributor. Make sure that you keep your domain name. That's really important. Can you imagine if your distributor, if you ever fall out with them, what happens then? We can say that if someone wants a domain name, they suddenly jump up in price. For that. Another question I have here is about hosting. The question is hosting internationally safe? The answer is yes. There are huge companies that run servers internationally and host internationally. Many of those companies are American, and I think it's as safe in outside, in their servers outside Frankfurt as it is in Arkansas or in Argentina. The companies appear to, we, for example, we only work with the very large U.S. multinational companies, and clearly we wouldn't, we wouldn't recommend people looking at small hosting companies. You should always go for the very big ones because they have more resources for that. I'm looking at the time. I'm conscious of the time. We said we keep it under an hour. I do want to recommend, stress if you could please fill out the survey at the end. I've just got a couple more questions coming in now. The question is really, should my distributor then be doing social media? Leading on from the question about domain names and your distributor is probably very good at social media because they're in the local market. So it's a great asset to use your distributor to help you with social media. But not all distributors are good at actually managing social media campaigns, setting up campaigns, looking at the metrics and the goals, and getting it out there on the different platforms. So they might be great at producing some content, but they might not have the ability to put it all together in a social media campaign. So make sure you're doing what each person is good at. If your distributor is good at logistics and tax and making sure you get your VAT or things like that, then that's great. But maybe, help him out with content, but be wary of asking him to do things that he's not an expert in, is our recommendation. And again, I'm happy to talk through that with you at any time. So this sort of rounds up our webinar. Thank you all so much for coming. Please answer our survey. And I wanted to thank all the people at the World Trade Center of Arkansas. They do such a fantastic job for Arkansas companies. And I know Denise and her team are always there, ready, willing, and totally dedicated to helping companies in the region, just, helping them grow their businesses and help them in any way that they can. So please do reach out to Denise and her team at the World Trade Center of Arkansas, or contact me if there's a web specific question to ask, and please fill out our survey. Thank you all so much.
Okay. Hang on just a second. I wanted to say two things to the two people that asked the question, the social media question and the person who's asking the series of questions related to representation of the website. Email me directly and you and I can sit down and have a conversation about that. And my email address is Denise, DENISET, uark.edu, Denise T at uark.edu. And the other person that asked the question that we were not able to answer, please email that question to me as well, and I will respond to you quickly. I'm actually in Washington, D.C. until Friday. I'll be back in my office on Friday, so I'll try to respond before then. But if we need to have a conversation over the phone, we can take those up on Friday. We can coordinate a time. So I want to make sure that we cover the questions that were asked and I'm able to get the information to them and help them better understand opportunities as it relates to working with their reps abroad.
Thank you so much, Denise. That's me. So
Thank
please
you.
do contact Denise directly. And my bad for not putting your email address there, because
No
I
worries.
apologize for that. But please do contact her. I'm sure you all probably know her as an established figure in the export world. Thank you all very much. Happy exporting to you all, and see you online. Take care. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Denise. Bye.